Good morning to Ms Jacobson.
Yes, kia ora.
Just so you know, I'm the independent chair. On my left, we've got Alan Watson, who's the independent hearing commissioner, and we've got Felicity Foy, who's the commissioner and the councillor. So we're here to hear what, I suppose Rochelle has explained what happens, hopefully. Right. We're here to listen to you and to ask questions when you're ready.
Kia ora, my name is Rochelle Jacobs. I'm a Director and Senior Planner at Northern Planning and Development 2020 Limited. I have prepared evidence on behalf of Waitangi Limited on the effects of the proposed district plan as notified and its management of the Waitangi National Trust estate. Today, I'll provide a summary of my assessments that have formed the evidence as it relates to these hearing topics. The estate includes the historic Waitangi Treaty Grounds, Te Puta Whenua, which is where Te Tiriti o Waitangi, or the Treaty of Waitangi, was first signed between Māori and the British Crown on the 6th of February 1840. It includes a number of other sites which have high significance in terms of New Zealand history. In addition to the treaty grounds, a wide range of land uses and activities are undertaken on the estate, including pastoral farming, a hotel, a golf club, other sports facilities, a concert venue, a public boat ramp, and a wharf. The estate comprises recreational and tourism, coastal, estuarine, and other natural values. Waitangi Limited's primary relief is to develop a special purpose zone that covers the whole estate. The special zoning will better provide for the various uses, activities, and values of different parts of the estate referred to above. And bespoke rules will be included to provide the protection sought by the various overlays. It is supposed that these rules will, in most cases, take precedence over the many overlays that apply to this site, meaning that when assessing a proposal at the estate, you would look at the special purpose chapter rather than all the various zone and overlay chapters in the proposed district plan. Special purpose objectives and policies will also apply to the estate. These objectives and policies will provide the site with the mana and acknowledgement it deserves for balancing the need for operational activities in less sensitive areas of the estate. These tailored rules and framework ensure future development need not be considered through the lens of a production zone. The majority of the estate is currently mapped in the rural production zone. These objectives and policies would reference the purpose stated in the Waitangi National Trust Act, which sets the scene for Waitangi and how it operates now and into the future. Across the estate, there are quite different areas of development and historical significance. As a result, Waitangi Limited intends to seek that the special purpose zone includes subzones to best differentiate between these areas. While this matter will be discussed at length in hearing 15B later next year, it is necessary to set the scene as our primary relief does and will continue to impact upon the various topic hearings being heard throughout this process. In regards to Waitangi Limited's secondary relief in this hearing, it covers the topic of earthworks, signs and temporary activities. While I am generally in agreement with the recommendations made in the various Section 42A reports as prepared, some of the proposed rules and standards we have submitted on or which have changed as part of the Section 42A reporting do require some further consideration. I refer to the table appended to the statement which summarizes the relevant issues and Waitangi Limited's responses to the recommendations in the 42A reports. These issues are detailed in full in my evidence and the attached appendices. Is it okay if I just go through that table?
Yep.
That kind of just summarizes everything I've got in my evidence.
Thank you.
The first one is earthworks. There are a couple of exemptions that I did seek for earthworks. These are fence lines and posts, file service connections, trenching of drains or cables, excavations for building foundations, normal rural practices and septic tanks and associated drainage. Some of those were accepted in the 42A report, but some of them weren't. My main point for these exemptions is that they're all minor in nature. And while in most cases, they would not trigger resource consent, if you're on a larger site and you're maybe doing a stage development or you're waiting to do some landscaping within 12 months of undertaking the earthworks, those minor activities could be the reason why you trigger resource consent. Like, for example, imagine needing to put up 2 po associated with a new build, and the earthworks associated with putting up those 2 po is the reason why you trigger resource consent. So it's those minor things that I think just need to have more consideration. I think they just need to be relooked at. Community signs is a new definition. In the definition, the last sentence includes advertising of events. Signs advertising events would also be captured as a temporary sign. As such, there'll be a double up of where you could be classified as both. This could be fixed by deleting the last sentence of the definition, meaning community signs would cover permanent signs instead, which I think is intended. It's also important to point out that the associated community signs rule only allows for one community sign per site. If you had signage associated with that community facility and then an additional sign advertising event at this location, you would trigger the need for resource consent for that advertising sign. I think that just needs to be looked at as well. Temporary signs. I've recommended a few changes to the rule layout to provide clarity in my evidence. As it's not clear from reading sign S1 and sign S3 what rules take precedence. I know normally you would default to the most restrictive standard, which on the treaty grounds would be the overlay standards, which I don't think is the anticipated outcome for temporary signs. To fix this, I have suggested that there be a separate standard for temporary signs to cover that activity. Signs not visible from a public place was another major one. This is a quite important part of the operative district plan definition, as it meant that internal signage, such as signage within a museum, within the forest, within the cafe at Waitangi, would not be counted as forming the sum total of signage on the site. With these signs now being captured as meeting the definition, it adds quite a lot to that total sign area, especially on the Waitangi estate, which has a number of different activities, including some public, which all require some form of signage. I think this is a particular issue. I think this particular issue is something we'll have impacts across the wider district as well. And it's something council needs to carefully consider how it's dealt with. When it comes down to it, if a sign can't be seen from a public place, is it causing an adverse effect? I note that the definition of sign is a national template definition, hence why I've tried to incorporate the not visible from a public place in the rules instead. Signs located within an overlay. I have added community signs to PER2, such that they can be regarded as a permitted activity, and any sign within the coastal environment, for example, or any other overlay, which meets the definition of a community sign, would otherwise need resource consent under this rule, which seems quite restrictive. Sign S1, minimum sign area, and sign S3, minimum number of signs. I've recommended the first standard be deleted and moved to new sign S7 in my evidence. I've added a new wording for the Waitangi estate exception, such that a new sign less than 1 square metre, which is what was offered in the section 42A report by the report writer, can actually be installed as a permitted activity. As detailed above, I also asked for some additional exemptions regarding signs not visible from a public place and signs in general on the Waitangi estate. Heritage areas and scheduled heritage resource. These two terms are used in the sign S1 standard. However, it's not clear as to what exact resources they apply to. So I'd like to seek some clarification on that, if they either be defined or the exact wording of the features be included in that rule or that standard instead. In regards to
so at the moment there's no definition for heritage areas or
scheduled heritage resource. Yeah, and they capture quite a few things.
So it doesn't just apply to Waitangi and say parts of
No, it's the whole district. It's the whole district. Correct. And because they've got different thresholds as well within that standard. So it's good to differentiate between the two.
Yep.
In regards to temporary activities, the treaty grounds on the Waitangi estate is a national gathering site of remembrance of significant historical events and important cultural celebrations. Year on year, Waitangi Day celebrations grow, and in 2024, the festivities attracted around 60,000 people. On the days leading up to Waitangi Day, over 10,000 people flock to the treaty grounds and the surrounding estate each day. As part of Waitangi Limited's primary relief, we're seeking a special purpose zone that will properly reflect its function under the Waitangi National Trust Board Act 1932 as a place of historic interest, recreation, enjoyment and benefit that has been gifted to all New Zealanders. As discussed hearing for, providing the space for New Zealand's national celebration places a large burden on the Waitangi estate, not only to coordinate and accommodate Kiwis from across the motu, but also to fund. I would like to acknowledge and support we've had from the Section 42A report writer on this topic. However, as discussed in detail within my evidence, we are now seeking a further amendment to ensure the rules properly reflect the national significance and special nature of the estate as a whole. We're seeking a rule which specifically relates to Waitangi celebrations on and within a week of Waitangi Day. This rule would enable events on the estate while at the same time ensuring proper traffic controls are in place. There would also be a requirement to remove temporary structures within a week of the event occurring. I note that in Appendix 1 of my evidence, where I provided the rules, I've accidentally referenced Lot 1 DP 326610 in this rule. This should not be referenced for this particular rule, as other allotments such as the golf course, which is a different allotment, are also used on Waitangi Day for car parking. TAR1 would remain applicable to all other temporary activity events on the estate. I note that while we initially sought a concession for 5 events, we're now seeking that this limit does not apply to the events on Lot 1 DP 326610, which is the main allotment on the estate. This is due to the nature of the site and its important role in facilitating events. On this allotment alone, there is the treaty grounds, yacht club, sport field, boat ramp and Bledisloe domain, all of which could host temporary events, using up the available limit of 5 quite quickly. Some of the events would be provided for under existing consents, others may not, which would pose an issue. Any questions?
So that last, can I get this right? We've got 2 pages to begin with.
Yeah.
And we've got 3 pages.
Yeah.
And what have you just done?
I've just done a quick little summary of my thing
Okay,
here,
would
which I
you-
can give you as well.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I was looking, I was making notes about that. I'm just making sure we haven't missed the page.
You know, no worries.
If you can do that, would be great.
Yes, perfect. Basically, it's just a summary of what I've got in my evidence and this.
Okay, that's good then.
To try and hone in on those main issues.
I'll follow up on a question that Mr. Watson spoke earlier on when you weren't here about obviously your first goal is to have a special purpose zone.
Yes.
How far down that avenue have you got, and have you had discussions with staff? Obviously you can't have discussions with the panel regarding that, and whether the staff would be responsive and possibly recommend to us. I don't know because they haven't seen it. Because at the moment it seems that you're having to spend a lot of time and effort, money, coming to the hearings, trying to get stuff that you don't really want because you want a special purpose zone.
Yes.
And how far off would you be in getting that information together so you could get a special purpose zone?
We're waiting on a couple of reports to come through and consultation with iwi. That's our biggest thing that we're waiting on, is consultation with iwi.
Okay.
So we need to make sure that's okay.
Yep.
Before we.
So you're going to have to do this type of thing, unfortunately, until because you may not get agreement there.
Exactly. I mean, we're still going to present what we've got.
If you have to.
Yes, we have to. There's, with what's been proposed in this proposed district plan, there's major effects on the estate. It's because of the number of overlays that are on the treaty grounds itself. Almost anything that they do is going to require resource consent, and that's just not workable. It's just not workable at all.
So when you refer now to the lot, excluding, like at one stage you had the map which you wanted all land all the way out to Hururu
Yes.
Falls almost.
So that's the whole estate.
Yeah.
But as part of the estate, you've got the treaty grounds as well. So that's the core of everything. And what we're essentially looking at is how do we protect that and protect the surrounding area as well, because it's the surrounding area that is going to basically create a revenue to help support that, because at the moment they don't get much funding at all. As Ben was saying in the last hearing 4, they've only got about 18 months worth of money to basically operate.
Right.
So they have to look at ways in which they can develop outside of the treaty grounds to keep it going, basically. So putting additional restrictions in place for really minor resource consents, I mean, it's thousands of dollars. That's unnecessary. So,
Do you want to carry on?
Yeah, I mean, that was really the concern, whether or not we don't make an interim finding about what we think about the special zone. Have you got obviously without going back and looking at the original submission, that you've got a special zone prepared as such, you've got the provisions for it. So at the present time, you're really tinkering that to
yes.
try and take account of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there just seems to be a lot of work for you guys, a lot of work for the staff as well.
Oh, there is.
I mean, because I've just circled everywhere you've used the word exemption.
Mm.
I'm running out.
There's a lot.
Children and out.
Yeah, I know.
Just on one of those final points you made, just the second box up about amend that rule to exempt just that particular allotment.
Yes.
That allotment you described, is that the actual treaty grounds?
So that is the treaty grounds. It is the Bledisloe Sports Field. It's the yacht club. It's the sports ground next to the treaty ground. It's the large allotment. It's based, not Popcorn. No.
Is that so the area used for Waitangi there?
Exactly.
So that's where you say
exactly.
the majority of activities would
Yeah, that's where all the kind of the events would be taking place is on that site.
Yeah.
Then you've got the other sites which have been taken off, like the Cockthorne, the golf course, for example, which we haven't included because they're kind of more a little bit standalone, which is why we thought that would be a little bit too far. So we've just sought to exempt just that main allotment.
Yeah, as I say, there's just so many exemptions there. It's, I mean, I wouldn't say it's unworkable, it's workable, but then you don't really want to have a district plan that has a whole series of exemptions.
Exactly. And that's why we wanted to go with the special zone originally, because then at least you could just say this rule applies to all zones except for the Waitangi Estate, for example, and then you have your own rules for the Waitangi Estate zone.
So when you're developing that special purpose zone more in terms of, further consultation with iwi and the like, do you do that in discourse with the officers as well?
That's our plan, yes. Yeah, we've had some, since hearing 4, we've had some discussions with council, just quite initial ones. We haven't got into any detail or anything like that yet, but they seem quite on board with what we're doing, so.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. I have a question about not just consultation with Mana Whenua, but also Heritage New Zealand, Piritonga. We're to hear from them tomorrow. And you might have seen their submission.
Yes.
So I was just wondering about their feedback to your special zone, given its significance, and also given that you've got a table here about earthworks with minor activities.
So we have been working quite closely with Heritage New Zealand from the start. We've actually got a very good working relationship with them, and they've actually given us feedback on our initial first draft of our provisions. Earthworks was something that we've had some discussions on, and whether or not between us and Heritage New Zealand we'd have like a bit of a memorandum of understanding in terms of earthworks, because they still want to see things that are happening, especially on the treaty grounds. But it's not just the treaty grounds, which has high archaeological value. For example, on the golf course, that is an old tar site and also an old, was it one of the first gun emplacement sites as well? One of the main ones there. So that's got quite a lot of archaeological value too, which again, the current, or the rules in the operative district plan haven't always protected that site. So again, we've had a lot of conversations with them about that and how we develop our rules. And that's why when we've looked at the special purpose zone, we've looked at doing subzones. And as part of those subzones, picking up those more critical areas which have more significance, and then allowing for development outside of those where it's not as restrictive.
I just had a query as well about the signage, because you talked about how large site is, and then you've also highlighted about subzones because it's such a large site.
Yes.
In your evidence here, it talks about the maximum number of signs, and also talks about the maximum sign area per site.
Yes.
So I think for larger sites like
that's my point about signs not visible from a public place. So in the operative district plan at the moment, the definition of signs doesn't include signs that are not visible from a public place. So in the Waitangi estate, most of their signage isn't actually visible from a public place. So it doesn't get counted as a sign, and therefore that sum total area of signs doesn't go over. But with the definition changing and that exclusion no longer being in place, then as soon as you put even just say a 1 square metre sign on, or even like a 30 square metre sign, you're going to need resource consent for it because you're already over that sum total area. And that's going to be the same with, for example, council sites as well, where you might have multiple signs. That sum total is going to be taken up pretty quickly, especially if you have signs for like your public toilets and all of that. You add all those together and your threshold's gone. So it's just something to think about, because I mean, it's the rule is similar to in the operative plan. It's just that definition that's changed, which is.
Are the officers recommend that be changed, or they just stick to the state?
They've stuck to. Yeah, I don't think they've really appreciated the big difference that it has and the consequences of that. And it's like I was saying about museum signage. There's no definition about what happens if you've got internal signage detailing, you know, what you're looking at inside a museum. That's technically signage as well. Does that mean that that has to be counted in your sum total? Cafe signage internally, does that need to be counted? You think McDonald's, you go in there, you've got the big signage board, does that need to be counted in terms of their total?
I think they highlight some important definitions.
Do the staff have any questions or clarification want me to go through?
Possibly, we would never ever count
Internal signage.
internal
Yeah.
signage.
Yeah, I know
I
that.
don't think it's intended.
Not intended, I know.
So,
And I'm just asking.
Yeah, look, I think we just need to be careful on matters of scope. The submission is quite specific to parts of the Waitangi site around that. It is quite a considerable difference to the rest of the PDP. There's a range of complexities around the site, there's no doubt, but also there is a range of sensitive and important values that need to be managed at the same time, including commercial, balancing those against commercial imperatives as well. So, yeah, look, it's clearly a work in progress. We've had discussions with Waitangi's representatives before my time, generally speaking on this, and we are keenly waiting more detail on what's proposed. And as noted also earlier today, they will receive that minute that we're putting out. The panel hopefully will be putting out this week around expectations on that sort of thing. There are a few matters that I just want to clarify in scope, but
Okay.
Just my right of reply.
And reply. Okay. Anything else?
No, it's good.
Anything either you two would like to say? Anything else? If not,
One thing I did notice is with the temporary activities rule in terms of timing, the other thing would be any like Anzac Day celebrations that would actually sit outside the timeframes as well. And I don't know if that would have impacts further than just Waitangi.
because the dawn service, you mean?
Yeah. Because the temporary events rule that's currently in the operative district plan only applies to the rural production zone, and now it's been kind of put across everything. So it's what are those implications? The other thing I was thinking of just going through everything was in regards to existing activities where you've got consent for scale of activities, and they may do something that's a temporary event, which sits outside of what they have been consented. If they did that, before they used up their events, so they've got an allowance for 2, for example, they had one event, then they had one that wasn't consented for, and then they had additional. Does that mean they need consent because they're doing something outside of it, or does the events that are already picked up from their existing consented scale of under their scale of activities consent cover them? That makes sense.
Nothing else? No questions? Thank you very much for your presentation, and we might see you again.
I'm sure you will.
Thank you for coming in early.
Yeah, thank you. We're now having a adjourned, do we?
Yes. We are back at 1:30 with Chris.
Just on the telco, then we got this booking, and then is he coming a bit earlier or not?
Yes.
Yeah, you haven't got a hold of Martin Robinson.
Martin's confirmed for 3.
3, okay. 3, okay.
Stop recording now.